Em primeiro lugar, bem-vindos a esta sessão. É mais um webinar integrado num programa mais vasto de webinars que nós estamos a organizar sobre os mais variados mercados e sobre as mais variadas áreas de atividade. Hoje temos o mercado dos Estados Unidos e, em particular, o setor dos têxteis-lar e quais são, dentro deste quadro do Covid-19, quais são as novas pautas, ou seja, quais são as novas condições do mercado perante estas circunstâncias. O meu nome é Eduardo Henriques, eu sou o diretor da área de Digital e de Comunicação da AICEP. Hoje temos aqui um painel muito variado de oradores. Temos o nosso delegado nos Estados Unidos, João Mota Pinto, mas também temos depois a Jennifer Marks, o Michael Tower e a Warren Schulberg, que vão falar, e que são jornalistas, são consultores, são importadores e que vos vão falar em detalhe daquilo que são as novas condições do mercado americano. Como eu vos dizia há pouco, esta é mais uma ação dentro de um quadro maior de ações. Queria-vos dizer também que vamos continuar, e posso já anunciar alguns nas próximas semanas, ao longo do mês de junho, vamos organizar um conjunto muito variado de webinars. Já estão previstos vários mercados, a Irlanda, Reino Unido, Itália, Holanda, Canadá, Bélgica, Roménia, entre outros. Por isso, agradeço que estejam atentos, porque pode ser interessante para alguns de vós estes webinars. Relativamente aos temas que vão ser tocados, vão ser temas de mercado, vão ser temas de setor e vão ser temas muito também vocacionados para o e-commerce. Portanto, estejam atentos às mensagens dos vossos gestores de cliente, ao site da AICEP e também às redes sociais. Relativamente a esta sessão, queria só uma mensagem muito rápida. Agradecia que desligassem os vossos microfones e as vossas câmaras. E que, obviamente, todos estão convidados a colocar questões ao longo deste webinar. No final, nós vamos responder a todas as questões que forem colocadas, embora vocês possam colocar as questões todas que entenderem e coloquem-nas todas ao longo da sessão. Dito isto, acho que vamos passar então ao nosso delegado nos Estados Unidos, o João Mota Pinto. Muito obrigado. Até já.
Ora, muito bom dia a todos, senhoras e senhores empresários. Como o Eduardo disse, o meu nome é João Mota Pinto, sou delegado da AICEP para os Estados Unidos e é um prazer estar convosco aqui hoje. Hoje nós temos o privilégio de ter aqui três especialistas para fazer uma apresentação sobre o mercado dos têxteis-lar nos Estados Unidos. Temos o Sr. Warren Schulberg. O Sr. Warren Schulberg é um jornalista e consultor especialista do setor de retalho dos têxteis-lar. É um jornalista que escreve para revistas como a Forbes, The Robin Report, The Business of Home e também para a Home Textiles Today. Depois também temos a senhora Jennifer Marks. A Jennifer Marks tem mais de 30 anos de experiência e é especialista também no setor dos têxteis-lar e é chefe de redação da Home Textiles Today, que é a revista mais conceituada no mercado para o setor. E por fim, vamos ter o senhor Michael Tower, que é um importador, é o fundador e o CEO de uma marca que se chama Delegate Home, que é uma marca de têxteis centrada na qualidade e na sustentabilidade. Portanto, vamos ter aqui uma visão muito completa do mercado no mercado dos Estados Unidos. Eu vou fazer a minha apresentação em inglês, porque os senhores vão estar a acompanhar e, portanto, eu a partir de agora farei a minha apresentação em inglês. Okay, then, so now I'll do my presentation in English as promised. And so basically, I'll tell you a little bit about the impact of COVID in the US economy. I'll tell you what we know about COVID, what we don't know, and then I'll do a brief introduction about the home textile sector. So basically what we know that as of now, and these are numbers for last Friday, but as of today, we have over 1.7 million people in the US that were infected by COVID. We have over 98,000 deaths. So this COVID has a big impact in the US society. We also know that the global economy will shrink by at least 3% this year. These are numbers from the International Monetary Fund. And that, according to the statistics, according to the Bureau of Economic Analysis, the US GDP decreased 4.8% in the first quarter of 2020, of this year. And again, we should take into consideration that the economy in the US only closed at the end or towards the middle of March, start closing. So this already had a big impact in the US economy. We also know that globally, the loss of the GDP could amount to some $9 billion. As of last week, 38.4 million people in the US have applied for unemployment benefits. This means that 1 in every 4 Americans have applied for unemployment benefits. And we also know that the US unemployment rate hit a new record high of 14.7% during the month of April. So the impact of the coronavirus in the US economy has been devastating. The worldwide trade will plummet between 13 and 32% this year, and this will have a direct impact on the way that you do business. If you look at this next graph, we can see the pattern of the global trade, and we can see that when we hit the crisis in 2008, that is that blue curve, the global trade decreased by some 12% and then start to recover. However, if you look at 2020, we can see the projections tell us that the impact on the global trade of the coronavirus will be much deeper. And so the companies, they need to prepare to answer. The US worldwide imports during the first quarter already decreased 4.3%. And as you'll see later on, this had already a big impact on the home textile sector. And we also know that most governments will be heavily indebted from the expensive emergency relief measures. In other words, all the governments in the world have been injecting a lot of capital in the economy to try to save the economy. And so the governments will be heavily indebted. And at the end of the day, it's going to be up to the consumer or to the taxpayer to pay for part of these investments. We also know that many of the companies that were viable businesses, sound businesses, are facing bankruptcies. And this is very true in this sector on the home textiles. And if you look, for example, in the US, at the biggest retail chains, at department stores, many of them have applied for bankruptcy in the past month. Some of them have applied for bankruptcy to protect themselves against creditors so that they can recover. But many of them are facing real difficulties, and many of the stores might close. So this is what we know. What we don't know about the COVID. First of all, we don't know the path that the virus will take. We don't know if in the fall the virus will become stronger and will come back very strong, and if the economies will have to close again or not. This is a big if that we don't know. Also, we really don't know the effectiveness of the policies meant to contain the outbreak and minimize the economic damage. We know that all the governments have implemented the social distancing. We know that governments have been injecting a lot of money, but we are not really sure of the effectiveness of these policies. We don't know if more people are going to be getting infected in the future. We don't know if the money that is being put into the economy will be enough for the companies to recover. Also, we don't know if people are going to remain at home in the future until there's a vaccine or a cure for the virus. And so we don't know if the spending, the consumer spending, is going to be depressed, because if people are home, they tend not to shop as if they were out and around. So this might be a big problem that we don't have an answer to. And we also don't know what will be the geopolitical environment of increased protectionism. We know that many countries, many governments are talking about reshoring, bringing production home in order to protect their economies in the future against a crisis like this. And of course, the greater protection of strategic supply chains is on the table, and less reliance on imports. So again, governments, there's a lot of talk about companies starting to move some of the production in-house. And together with it, there's also policies to decouple from high-risk trading partners. Of course, I believe that the home textiles is not going to be one of the sectors that will be greatly affected by this. I believe that the sectors that where you're going to notice this are more the food supply industry and the pharmaceutical industry. So because pharmaceuticals, medicines, and food are the priority needs, basic needs that someone has during a crisis. So now a brief introduction about the home textile sector. First of all, we all know that the US is the largest buyer of home textiles products, over $9.3 billion in 2019. We also know that during the first quarter of this year, the home textiles imports recorded a 14.24% decrease. So the US already started importing less home textiles during the first quarter of this year. And the amount of home textiles that the US imports from Portugal is about $134 million. These are numbers of 2019. But unfortunately, also during the first quarter of this year, there was already a 12.83% decrease of Portuguese textiles exports to the US. But one thing is true. The US market is the main destination for Portuguese home textiles products, period. So it's the most important market for Portugal. Portugal is the US largest supplier of all textiles products, and it is the 5th largest supplier of bed, bath, and table products. So on top of Portugal, you only have countries like China, India, Pakistan, and Turkey for bed, bath, and table products. So what are the opportunities for Portuguese companies? First of all, there's a recognition of the Portuguese home textiles products as quality and of good value. So the quality for the money, the value for the money, the US consumer and the US importers, they recognize that Portugal produces high quality and the product of high value. Also, the dimension and the diversity of the US market. So the US market is very large. We are talking about a 330 million people market, and the US consumer buys a lot. So by nature, the US consumer likes to purchase a lot. So this, as soon as the economy recovers, this will be again a very important market for the US products. But there are challenges. And the challenges are the high competition. Then again, China, India, Pakistan, and Turkey are countries that compete directly with Portugal. And more companies want to enter the US market, especially during the crisis. So there will be more competition in the future. Also, the Portuguese companies, you need to maintain a regular presence in the market. Although you have your importers, you need to keep coming to the markets, participate in fairs, participate in the market weeks. So you need to do advertising online or otherwise. So you need to keep showing that you are in the market to stay and to promote your brands. And of course, it's difficult to introduce your own brands. We understand that it's very expensive to promote your own brand. That's why most of the products that we sell to the US market are black label products. And there's this difficulty. But if you can do it, if they have the means to do it, at the end, you'll end up being rewarded. And of course, related to this, marketing costs are extremely expensive in the US, but you have to keep a presence with some kind of advertising of your products. And of course, the access to new distribution channels, this is also a big challenge. So as any company, you should not be happy with the importers and the distribution channels that you already have. You should keep exploring new alternatives, and one of these alternatives will be to do it through e-commerce. And this again, it's here very clear in the trends, in the future trends of the home textiles. First of all, this is a trend that already came from the past, but it's now more and more important. So there's always concerns from the US customer on sustainability, eco-friendly, organic, and other certifications products. So if you develop a product that is antibacterial, anti-germs, this will be more important in the future, especially in these times of this pandemic. Again, the other aspect is the growth of e-commerce. If you don't have an e-commerce platform, you should jump on it right away. By not having and using e-commerce platforms, you are wasting 25% of the market. As nowadays, 25% of all retail is doing by e-commerce. Okay, and the other trend, although as I told you before, it's not, I don't believe it will happen in the textile sector as in many other sectors, is this tendency of reshoring and signs of gradual return to domestic production. Again, it will take time because at the end of the day, we need to see if the consumer is prepared to pay more for a product that is now being manufactured elsewhere. And just to finish, this is a quote for Mr. McKinsey of Nielsen that basically is saying that by not innovating, not changing your product flow, and adjusting the way your portfolio looks like will be a fundamental mistake. So I'll end here my presentation and I'll pass the mic to Warren. Thank you.
Bom dia, everyone. I hope everyone is well. And glad to be part of this. And I'm going to give just a quick overview of the market here. And my colleagues will go into more detail in some areas, but this is just kind of an overview of what I'm calling the new abnormal, because there's certainly nothing normal about this at all. And what we found in crisis is that when patterns are broken, new worlds emerge. And I think that's what we're going to see here. If you look back to the two most recent crises that affected the US and the world, the Great Recession of 2007, 2008, and the 9/11 terrorist attacks, the industry and the society that came out of that, there were a lot of differences and a lot of changes. So I think you're going to see some new worlds emerge. I wish I knew what they all were, but it's going to be different than what it was. So I think first off, we need to look at what everybody is calling, or what some people are calling, the swoosh recovery. And this is, of course, the Nike logo. And a lot of the financial and economic experts are saying that 2020 is basically going to be a waste, and there's going to be no recovery. 2021, we're going to see some recovery, but we're really not going to see getting back to our current levels until 2022. So we had a very quick drop, and it's going to be a relatively slow and gradual recovery. And I think that's important to know and to put the context of your own business into perspective. Couple of generalities. Maybe, just maybe, home becomes more important. Certainly, people are spending more time in their home, and they may be more focused on home furnishings products. If you look to the greatest challenges of shoppers these days, it's been they're spending all their money at restaurants and travel and what we call experiences, and a lot of that is just not going to happen anymore. So there's a reasonable expectation that some of that money is going to come back to the home furnishings market. E-commerce, João said it very well, it's going to double from where it was. So if it was 10 to 15 to 18% of the market coming into the pandemic, it's going to be 25 to 30% coming out. And I think that's going to be the single most important change in the American market. And companies will need to adapt to that. Increased number of retail bankruptcies. We're already seeing that with J.C. Penney and Neiman Marcus. The folks I talk to say that there's probably going to be at least one more this week and perhaps a second one. So we're going to see a lot of companies that are going to be bankrupt. Doesn't mean that they're leaving the marketplace. You've got a Pier 1 that is going to be liquidated, but Neiman's and Penny's are going to return in different formats. Important thing is companies need to have cash, and that is going to be so important. I think if you saw over the weekend that Hertz Rent-A-Car filed Chapter 11 bankruptcy, and they were worried they only had $1 billion in cash, and that wasn't enough to get them through. So that kind of puts it in perspective. Companies in the home textile business are not the size of Hertz, but they didn't think $1 billion was enough. We're going to see an acceleration of mall and store closings. Again, not a shocker. This is a process that has been going on, and I think the best way to look at it is that anything that was going to happen in the next 2 to 4 years is probably going to happen in the next 6 to 9 months now. So it's just an acceleration of the trends that were in process before this. Going to be massive inventory levels. I saw one number that U.S. retail sales will have lost $450 billion US dollars over a 3-month period. So if you trace that back to factory costs of $220 billion, that's a lot of goods that have to go through the pipeline. The Telegraph newspaper in the UK says it's going to take 18 months for all of this merchandise to work its way through the pipeline. So a lot of excess goods and a lot of pressure on margins. I don't think we're going to see a significant change in the Asian sourcing structure or country of origin manufacturing. Certainly, due to other factors, politics, tariffs, whatever, China has been very vulnerable. But the fact of the matter is that big U.S. retailers who need big commodity programs, there's a limited number of places where they can go for that. So China's going to stay important. India's going to stay important. Pakistan will stay important. And the opportunities for Portugal and Turkey, there are some, but you're not going to see a massive change in the global supply chain. Let's talk about specifically with retail. The big are going to get a lot bigger. Walmart and Target both have stayed open during the pandemic, and they've gained a lot of market share. So they're going to get bigger. The dollar stores are going to get bigger. The warehouse clubs, Costco and Sam's, are going to get bigger. And I think the little are going to get a little bigger as well. The specialty stores, I think there will be some movement for shoppers to go local and frequent their independent specialty stores. Not a massive change. I think the specialty store market here in the U.S. is relatively tiny, probably 3% of the marketplace. So I don't think that's going to change radically, but the specialty stores that get through this are going to do better. The losers are going to be department stores and Penny specifically. Macy's is going to close probably 200 stores, maybe more. Penny's is talking about 250 stores closing. And the other department stores, Dillard's, Belk, probably are going to have some closings as well. But if you think back, a lot of their stores are in those malls that are going to close. So a lot of pressure on them. The other pressure is on the hospitality market. I know that's a sector that the Portuguese companies have had some success with. People are just not going to be staying in hotels for a while. And certainly the developers are not going to be opening a lot of hotels. So hospitality market, I think, is going to be one of the losers, at least for the short term. The great unknowns are Bed Bath & Beyond and Kohl's. Again, these are two players that are kind of in the middle of the American market, not luxury, not super competitive on price, and a lot of changes at Bed Bath & Beyond. As those of you who do business with them know, it's an entirely different group of people running the company now, and it remains to be seen if this new group can be more successful than their predecessors. Kohl's is the other unknown. Hard to say what's going to happen there. As penny declines, Kohl's should do better. They're the biggest direct competitor, but I think we haven't seen Kohl's be able to take advantage of that. So I still put Kohl's along with Bed Bath & Beyond as the unknowns. Online, again, we talked about this. E-com is going to be critical for all retailers. The off-price stores, Home Goods, Ross, Burlington, have virtually no e-com business or no online business at all. I think that will be a big problem for them, and they're going to have to get better at that. Specialty stores, little specialty stores that have resisted doing e-com are going to have to do that now. They can't afford to walk away from a quarter of the market. Augmented reality and virtual reality, and don't ask me which is which or what the difference is, but they're going to become required. And if you do business with Wayfair now, you know that Wayfair has a lot of requirements on the kind of photography and video that you supply. This is going to become more commonplace. And as a supplier, you're going to need to be able to offer those resources to your customers. And that's not just going to be a specialty or a luxury. That's going to become the cost of doing business, as will traceability. We were seeing this before, but it gets further exacerbated by the pandemic. Shoppers are going to want to know where their products came from, who made them, and how they got to their home. We've seen there's a retailer in Scandinavia, Arket, that has a big traceability program. Ralph Lauren announced here in the U.S. that they're going to start doing a traceability and be able to tell shoppers where their products came from. So again, this is going to be a big factor, and as a supplier, you're going to need to be able to offer that to your customers. Vendors, the big are going to get bigger, and the small are going to get smaller. Nothing new there. We've known that for a long time. What you are going to see is more vendors going direct to the consumer and bypassing the retailer. And I know that's very hard to do as an importer that you don't have the brands, you may not have the physical distribution here in the U.S., but I think that's something that all suppliers have to look into and see if there's a way for them to do it. 2 weeks ago, Frito-Lay, big snack company, announced that they were going to start selling potato chips directly to customers online, bypassing supermarkets and warehouse clubs. So when you've got a big company like that saying we're going to go direct, I think that's an indicator that this is a channel of distribution that companies have to look at. And again, harder for overseas companies to do it, but I think it's something that you'll just need to figure out a way to do it, and having that fulfillment to be able to offer next day or second day delivery is critical. So that means U.S. warehousing. Products, what we saw in food products was what in the U.S. we call comfort food, and it's all the soothing comfort food that makes you feel good. So in the U.S. it's mac and cheese and meatloaf and soup and things like that. I suspect that in Portugal, cod is somewhere in that comfort food category, but that's going to get translated into products. And I think people are going to want more traditional products, less wild, crazy designs, and just things that might remind them of better times. So more traditional, safer designs, I think that's going to be critical. And trusted names and brand names. And talked before about how hard it is to develop a brand name, and that's true. But I think Portugal has a brand name, and the consumer is going to want to see something, some name on a package that's familiar. And again, if your individual company doesn't have that brand name, emphasizing your made in Portugal aspect might be the way to do it. But brands are going to be much more important. Trusted, and think of brands as a trusted name, and it makes it a little easier to accept. So that's what you're going to see in products. Overall predictions, I think we can sit here now. We're still in the midst of this, but let's remember a couple of things. After 9/11, the forecasts that came out 2 months after 9/11 were very wrong here in the U.S. They said the U.S. would get more serious and less frivolous and would buy less stuff. And if you remember the first 8 or 10 years of this century, it was conspicuous consumption beyond belief, and we certainly did not get any less petty. So be careful of all the predictions now. The Great Recession projections were way too optimistic. A lot of people said, okay, this is going to come back in 6 to 12 months. And here in the U.S., it took really 3 years for a lot of the metrics to get back to where they were before. And we've had some that have still not gotten back or only got back last year. So it's going to be a slow recovery, and watch out for those wild, optimistic forecasts. So the ones you're seeing now, including the ones I've just made, I think you take them in the context of your own business and your own thoughts. And kind of remember that all forecasts are based on past history, and there is no past history with this pandemic. We've never been through something like this. Some of us are old, but we're not old enough to have been around in the 1918 great influenza panic. So, and even that was wildly different. So it's really hard to predict. So, I'd say you will need to make changes in your business, but be careful of some of the crazier forecasts. They're just not going to be true. But what I think is going to happen, and this is a quote from the Atlantic magazine, from the ashes, something new will grow, and something better too if we build it right. And I think that's true. After 9/11, we did see e-com really come into its own. After the Great Recession, we saw some fundamental changes in society and how people did things. And I suspect that right now there's people developing new businesses and new business models that we're going to hear about that are going to be very different and are going to be things that we couldn't possibly have imagined. So there will be new things and we'll have to adapt, but I think that's encouraging, is that as some of the old business models falter and collapse, there'll be new ones to replace it. And when that happens, people like Jennifer and I will be there to report on it. This is my email address. These are some of the places that I write for. I will write for just about anybody. So you can follow my writing here, and I think we'll see how this all turns out. But interesting times as a journalist and challenging times as a supplier. So with that, I say obrigada, and I turn it over to Jennifer, my colleague.
All right, I don't have my slide up yet, Eduardo. Let's see here. There we go. All right. Bom dia. Thank you, Warren. Thank you, João. Thank you, Eduardo. As João suggested at the beginning, there were some emerging trends that I think are going to not only continue to be important, but to accelerate. And one of them is the idea of narrative. People had already begun talking about this in the context of retailers having to tell a narrative in their merchandising, of brands and products having to tell a narrative to consumers that is something beyond price if you want to command something more than price. So quickly, where were we before COVID came out? There was something called in the tedium of familiarity, that we had hundreds of these boxes, these box retailers, these volume retailers, and there was a real sameness, and certainly they've been struggling to create experiences within their stores to lure people in. Unique experiences versus shopping. This is something that has been a difficulty for the consumer goods. Certainly the discretionary spending to consumer goods like home, because people were traveling and that's what they were doing with their money. This was also leading to this idea that we needed more customization and personalization to make products more meaningful, especially to millennials who are now parents, the oldest ones, and to Generation Z, who are now the younger, more mobile consumer. The key trends that impacted home textiles, I think, that were really emerging: sustainability. We've I think all seen that accelerate, especially in the last 3 years. Health and wellness, which for home textiles used to be a separate bucket. It was most often about sleep performance. And that and sustainability have merged really in recent years. It's hard to say which one is a subset of the other. The other thing doing good as a company or a brand, consumer or corporate social responsibility, especially for younger consumers. I think those three continue, certainly. So we know things are changing. We know this is changing consumers' attitudes and behaviors. It already has. To what extent it continues and moves forward and impacts on home textiles products, merchandising, retailing. I think one thing that all product developers, retailers, and suppliers agree upon right now is health and wellness. Has been, except for a certain consumer segment, a nice add-on, probably likely to become, at least in the immediate term, a selling feature. And the two big buckets here are antimicrobial and antiviral, with the whole messaging, right, is safety. Safety for you, safety for your family. Certainly, even though factories have been shut down in many places, we see some companies moving already. In Portugal, Napier is introducing a whole line of antimicrobial bath towels, and in India, Trident, the big towel mill, announced that every towel it makes going forward is going to have an antimicrobial application, whether retailers choose to feature it or not. But the key words are, clean, sanitary, sanitized, fresh. It's protection, it's safety. There is an expectation of more home-centric living. If you follow what's happening with airline stocks and hotel bookings, there is no great expectation that consumers in the U.S. are going to rush out en masse and begin traveling heavily again. That means they'll be doing more things at home. In the early stages of the shelter in place, stay-at-home movement. So in some places called safer at home, and that is an idea that some states are still promoting. Yes, you can go out, you can go back to work, but it's still safest to be home. 3 key areas here: home entertaining. People may not be going out to restaurants as much, but they are still going to have birthdays and anniversaries and bridal showers and baby showers and major holidays. And in this digital environment, of course, they may be doing Zoom parties and things like creating a tablescape with your linens and your home goods, your housewares will be more important. Home office is going to be important. There's a certain number of people who are not going to go back to work, or they're not going to go back to the office, or they're not going to go back to the office 5 days a week. The home office is going to be more important. And in fact, TJ Maxx, Marshalls / Home Goods announced last week that they're going to push into 2 new areas: home office and baby being those 2 areas. And in-home education. Across a lot of the country where school districts are closed, parents have had to set up ad hoc school rooms. There is some, depending on the markets, we don't know if school children will be going back next fall or not until the winter. And with the expectation that we may have occasional spikes of outbreaks here and there, you may see some schools opening, then closing again for a few weeks, sending children home. So there's an expectation that the home school room or school area within a child's room may become a more permanent fixture in American households. So you need to be thinking about the things. The home entertaining is easy, right? That's kitchen textiles and table linens, home office, comfort things, deck pillows, throws, the child's room, some expressive textiles, fun pillows, things that help them stamp their message on the world. Comfort and sanctuary, when you talk to the trend prognosticators, that they think for home that is a big, big takeaway. And for home textiles, obviously 2 key areas are going to be the bedroom and the bathroom. And in the bedroom, there is a role, obviously, for fashion bedding to play. It's relaxing, it's sumptuous, it helps de-stress. I think Warren kind of touched on a key question. Does this mean we move away from a lot of pattern and fashion? Is there going to be more of a move toward very casual spa-like? I think this kind of remains to be seen. Window has a role to play here. Certainly within the window category, room darkening and blackout curtains were already trending as part of a sanctuary and maybe keeping out a slightly scary world. This may be an area that continues to run or maybe sees a pickup. In basic bedding, it's health and wellness. It's helped you to sleep. It's clean. It's sanitary. It's anti-odor. I think all sleep regulation, all of that is going to be very important. In the bathroom, of course, we already have had a trend in some places toward the idea of your bathroom as a spa, your personal retreat. I think, and a lot of people you speak to expect that is also going to have more prominence. We're antimicrobial, but also anti-mildew, and that's not just for towels and bath rugs. That also goes for shower curtains and, where possible, for accessories. There's a company in New York called Excel that last year came out with a group of accessories made from a natural mineral that naturally just does not scum up, and it remains clean and antimicrobial. Odor absorbent was already important, but probably will become more important. And then on the personal care front, we had been moving away from really plush towels. We went through that era where they were so heavy. They weighed as much as a bathrobe. But I think we're going to see plushness come back somewhat. And the same thing in towels, just as a way to kind of generate some comfort for ourselves. So, on the subject of narrative, and João talked about, if you're not on e-commerce already, you really need to be. And whether you're doing it for yourself or you're supporting a retail partner, Target last week was discussing how its stores were open, but its e-commerce sales, once these shutdowns happened, boomed. And they are now doing an amount of e-commerce sales that they thought it would take them 3 years. They thought it would take them 3 years to get to this amount of e-commerce sales. So we know some e-commerce sales are going to stay e-commerce sales. So what do you need to do to help tell your story? You need to have good showcase photos of your products. If possible, if you can do videos explaining your product features, either that you're putting on your social media and your websites to inform consumers and retailers, or you can give to retailers to help sell your product. Social media support. That means if you have brands or you have licensed goods, think about ways you can support those on social media. And then obviously influence interactions are important within certain categories. Obviously HTT as an industry resource is here to help you tell your news. There is the editorial side of things. Obviously we have our daily e-news and our web posts and 2 opportunities that are immediately in front of you. Right now, we are working on an issue that is about innovations in bath products. So now's the time to send me an email, let me know what you're doing, because the bulk of this issue is about innovation in bath, and a lot of that is obviously going to be around health and wellness, but some other things too. Our key market issues are distributed at the major shows. We always have big editorial spreads. On our business side, I don't know if you've seen any of these, we now have live Zoomcasts and webinars. We did a tour of a factory called Cinemax that converted part of their line to making hospital beds. We did a session with another utility bedding maker called Softex. They had a little proprietary research they wanted to share with the market and kind of establish themselves as experts in their category. We also do proprietary research for companies that gives you a tool to go to your accounts with. As a company, we also have sister brands that if you only know HTT, in some regards, you might want to be in touch with them, whether editorially or in terms of sales. HFN is kind of our closest kin. They cover home textiles at volume, but they also have a reach into furniture stores and mattress stores. Home Accents today covers home textiles. It tends to be more focused on independent home furnishings retailers whose main product categories might not be home textiles but have a range of goods, and the interior design train. And then we have a publication called Designers Today, which is completely focused on reaching interior design firms and interior designers. I think I mentioned 2 opportunities. The first one was our bath issue. Our July issue is going to be primarily focused on utility bedding. So if you're in the basic bedding space or in the white goods space, give me a shout, because we would certainly love to help you spread the word about your products to this market. Obrigado. And I am passing it on to Michael, who is an excellent example of a brand that moves directly to consumers, but also has moved into retail.
Well, thank you, Jennifer, and thank you, Warren, and everybody. And I'm honored to be here and presenting. This has been an incredible ride for my company. To mirror what Warren and Jennifer have said, we don't know what's going to happen in the future. We can't really predict what's going to happen 3 months, 6 months, a couple of years from now. One thing we can do is one thing we need to do is take a look at how we're running our business, what can we do smarter, and how can we continue to grow and scale as the business does come back. I have the unique opportunity to be a CEO of an emerging brand that started about a year ago, so what a perfect time to start a new business. But to echo what Jennifer had said, there is a market out there for plush, sustainable products that bring comfort into your home. If we're not traveling, we're not staying at hotels, we're working from our homes, and we're starting to upgrade the stuff that we have in our homes. So whether it's bedding, whether it's towels, whether it's outdoor living, I know what we've been doing for the last couple months is we've been upgrading stuff in our house, doing yard work. So it's being more in tune to your environment and the products that touch you on a daily basis. The other thing is I'm also the elected chairman for the Organic Trade Association and its Fiber Council. So I have the humble experience of working with brands like Patagonia, with Coyuchi, with Boll and Branch, some really strong brands that have made a niche for themselves in that middle to upper end category. So I kind of see it from a sustainable, from an organic standpoint, and I see that this is here. It's going to get stronger, and I don't think that we can ever go back to where we were. We can only go forward. So to echo the presentations before me, it's about sustainability. It's also about health. It's about wellness. I'll take it one step further and say it's also about the chemicals that we bring into our home. Once COVID-19 is over with, and hopefully it'll be over with sooner versus later, all these chemicals that we bring into our home, we're going to have to figure out how to get rid of them. So I'm proud to say that I buy from Portugal, and I'm very happy and very proud to work with several great factories, family-run factories in Portugal. So I wave the Portugal flag like nobody else. So I'm honored to be on this call. So kind of a real quick recap. I don't know if you've all seen this slide, but really March 1st is when it really hit the U.S. You can kind of see the daily rate of COVID-19 and the death rate of COVID-19 kind of mirrors where the world is right now, but it's not decreasing yet. So, and after we had a holiday weekend here, are we going to see a bump in these numbers? We possibly could, but this is going to be our roller coaster ride as we continue to look at the future. Some interesting stats of the retail sales plunge is, where all the businesses is kind of different categories are having a negative sales growth, with the exception of online. Warren and Jennifer have both said it's all online business. Target, 50% of the business has come in the last several months versus they're anticipating 3 years from the future. So if you're not an e-commerce business, you're missing out on an incredible opportunity. Side note, last week we had our Organic Trade Association board call, and every single one of the home textile companies that was on that call reported that their sales were up considerably. So home is really hot right now, and it should continue, which kind of plays into a lot of factories that are on this call of how can you penetrate the U.S. market, how can you do more. Knowing that the shape of the retail world, there's going to be less stores. The bigger stores are going to get bigger, as Warren had mentioned, but there's also going to be a change in the supply chain. Bankruptcies, store closing, supply chain issues. You hear about all the orders that are canceled. Well, that inventory is not going anywhere. So what's going to happen is once the U.S. starts opening up, you're going to have a flood of commodity products hitting the market, and it's going to be tough to make any margins in that category because of the flood of the inventory that's going to be coming into the U.S. But there is an opportunity to stay the course and to look past the next 6 months from now and look at how can you grow your business profitably. These are some of the stats. They said 100,000 business will close in the next 5 years. And then there's up to 50% chance that 19 retailers will default on their loan. So it's being in the retail world is very difficult, and I think we've kind of stressed that quite a bit on this call. But the opportunity for Portugal, how can Portugal go from number 5 to number 4? You got to take a look at where you are right now and kind of pick a side. The retail stores that have a head start, the Walmarts, the Targets of the world, they were considered the essential retail stores, meaning that you can go get a gallon of milk and get a bath towel. They have low-priced products, and their business is doing very well versus the Bed Bath & Beyonds and the Kohl's that haven't had their stores open, who are relying on the e-commerce business. They're the ones that are going to be impacted the most in the next couple months. What you're going to see is a bunch of markdowns, and it's going to be creating a buying opportunity. There will be a price compression because, as I mentioned earlier, the cancellation of all the back orders, and it's going to drive the prices down. And then, the supply chain. The graph on this sheet kind of shows cotton prices over the last several months. It did bounce from its historic low, but as you guys know, the raw materials, it's still not where it once was a few months ago. So taking a look at the shift to e-com, it's having that relationship with that customer. There's a term that is called owned marketing, which means that companies like myself, I'll still have an omni-channel approach where I do sell to Macy's, I do sell to other retailers, but I want to own that relationship with that customer. So there should be a lot of smaller customers like us that will continue to grow and have that relationship with the customers, but be able to trade them up to something that's plush, something that is comfort, something that's not necessarily price points, but you're trading up that customer that won't be able to get those products in the traditional brick and mortar retailers. So the narrative, as Jennifer had mentioned, is Portugal needs to tell its story. And as I mentioned, I'm a big fan of the Portuguese products, and I think that you have to tout the success of the textile history and how many family-run businesses that there are in Portugal. I traveled all over the world. I've lived in China for a year. I've had a $150 million FOB China business with Walmart. I get it. So I've been in China, Turkey, India, have been in Pakistan. But then Portugal was the cleanest, the people were the friendliest, and the production, the quality was just outstanding. So telling your story with video, telling your story with influencers, how can you get people that are on the bubble of, well, do I really want to buy from China? Do I really want to buy from Pakistan? How can you get them to switch over to Portugal? And I think that is going to be your biggest challenge, but that is an opportunity as well. The good news is Portugal is one of the closest European countries to the U.S., and at this point in time, there isn't any issues between our president and the EU Union. Not to say there never will be, but at least it's a gentler, kinder versus what we're experiencing with China. And also, kind of take a look at the ethical and integrity that I've experienced with the Portuguese factories. Looking ahead, how can you be flexible on your MOQs, your payment terms for the right customer? Taking a look at which side you're going to pick. Is it going to be the commodity, hospitality, price point products, or are you going to go up mainstream and take a look at technology and what technology is bringing into our homes? Continue to invest in technology to speed up your process. How are you telling your message? But then also, how are you promoting your factory in the U.S.? Attending the trade shows, working with Jennifer and Warren and their sister companies. How can you get the message out? It's going to be those factories that tell the message of what they're doing, what they believe in, and their story that's going to allow their business to grow. You don't have that opportunity as much when you go to the commodity countries, as I call them. You've got a great story with a great history. How can you continue to do that? I was looking forward to the June Textile Week in Guimarães. Unfortunately, obviously, it was canceled, but hopefully that will be it will start up again. But I think that is how you get that message out. And then join organizations like a Textile Exchange or the Organic Trade Association if you have a sustainable product. GOTS, Okatech, Lenzo, and those are just a few of the certifications that are extremely important. And I think what we're seeing from the organic side of the business, this is not going away. It's growing. The organic food is growing, and I think that trend will continue, especially as we stay home and really take a close look at what we use day in and day out. So, with that being said, you got a story. How do you tell it? And you go out and you tell it, and you tell it to the U.S. And how can we help you go from number 5 to number 4? And how can we increase that 134 million to 150 million in the years to come? So, with that, thank you for the opportunity, and I'm very honored to be a customer and a vendor of 2 Portuguese factories. Thank you.
Thank you all. It was quite interesting, quite enthusiastic, your presentations. We have a couple of questions. I would ask you just to be, as quick as possible to answer those questions. And I would like also to emphasize to people that they can ask questions through our Q&A. I would turn to Portuguese just for a while. Se quiserem então colocar questões, agradeço que o façam através do chat para nós podermos responder. Já temos algumas, mas gostávamos de ter mais. Obrigado. Well, the first question, I will start by general questions and broader questions, and then I will try to focus on some items. The first question, I think everybody mentioned Asia and Asia suppliers, Asian suppliers in the US. This context, do you think that will change perception of Asian suppliers in the US market? Do you think that will be positive? That will be an opportunity for Portuguese suppliers? This is a question for each and every one of you. I will start with Warren, please.
I don't think there's going to be a big backlash against Asian suppliers. Again, the fact of the matter is that for a lot of the home textile products that are sold in the U.S., there's no other practical place for those products to be made but in China and India and Pakistan. So I think realistically, there may be a few people that say, "Oh, I'm not going to buy a Chinese product," but I just don't see a fundamental change in the American consumer psyche.
And I have to agree, and refer back to, if for no other reason, as João pointed out, there are nearly 40 million Americans who are now unemployed, and price is going to be very, very important to them for months to come, and that's going to come out of Asia, period.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's inevitable that we have to continue to do business with China and India and Pakistan. I do think that the traceability is going to come to a head, and I think the educated consumers will want to know where their products are made and have that traceability in that. So, but I think we can't get away from price.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this is all about predictions, and you mentioned that predictions right now are very difficult. But here's another question about, general speaking, the American market. At the moment, with the containment measures, we have seen an increase in demand for some items for the home. Is this also happening with textiles? What is the expectation for the home textile industry in the States? This is Warren, I will start again with you.
Yeah, I think the home textile business is going to be one of the beneficiaries of this more attention on home. Initially, we saw more functional products, anything to do with cooking or kitchen products, really took off during the early stages of this. Home cleaning, like vacuum cleaners, and also home environment products, air filters and air cleaners. But then the second wave has been more decorative products. If you looked at some of the numbers that Bed Bath & Beyond put out, I guess a couple of weeks ago, they said, yes, their bread maker business was their fastest growing business, but they had 110% increase in their bed and bath business online. So I think you're going to see decorative products, such as home textile products, be a beneficiary of this.
Agreed. And as Warren mentioned, Bed Bath & Beyond called that out. Target called it out recently. TJX, Marshall's Home Goods, has called this out. There is a feeling among several of the major retailers, as well as some of the major suppliers who are already, talking with major accounts about the back half of the year and going into next year. And there is a very strong feeling that consumers have been stuck at home and they've reevaluated their home, and home decor is going to pick up, and in some places already is.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that home is hot right now. It will continue to be hot. The question is how hot will it get? And the supply chain, how fast is the supply chain ready to feed the U.S. market? There is still some delays in shipments, especially coming out of India, and then less vessels. So, it's going to be that supply and demand, and it should be hot for the next several months, if not in the next year.
Yeah. Okay. João, you want to add something? No.
No, that's too specific.
No,
I'll leave
okay.
it to you. Thank you.
Okay. You mentioned, all of you mentioned the e-commerce surge in the US. What advice do you give to Portuguese companies that want to explore this way to enter the American market? I would start with Jennifer now, just for a change.
All right, and I'm actually going to throw it to Michael because he's doing this. He is
Well, you're bringing it on, Jennifer. No, I mean, it's inevitable. If you're going to be in the U.S., you got to have an e-commerce business. With technology, it's gotten a lot easier compared to several years ago. The platforms like Shopify and BigCommerce make it easy. It's just a question of the supply chain. How quick can you get it to the consumer? Doing it from Portugal can be pretty expensive, but if you find a company in the U.S. that can pick, pack, and ship, and the customer gets it within a couple of days, you're good. But the e-commerce business is not going away. It's convenience, it's comfort, it's knowing that within 2 days you're gonna be sleeping on new bed sheets. I'm seeing the growth in this. I'm seeing the growth in a lot of other smaller companies that are owning their marketing and are nurturing that relationship with that customer. And I think that's going to continue, and that's going to be stronger. And you add the influencers that Jennifer had mentioned in her presentation. Then it's about, okay, how are you differentiating yourself from the larger companies, the Goliaths, as I call them. But it's going to be plush, comfort, and what it means to that customer.
Yeah.
Edward, let me just refer
for a small. Yeah.
Let me just
go
tell
ahead.
you that, regarding e-commerce, and this is important that the companies understand, that only during last month, the month of March, the e-commerce in the US went up by 130%. So the big winner of this pandemic is e-commerce. E-commerce, it came to accelerate the trend that was already existing. So e-commerce was already growing, but now it's growing exponentially. So basically, for all the companies, this means that e-commerce, it's a survival tool for companies. So everybody should be doing e-commerce these days. If you don't do it, you won't survive the market. And that's the bottom line.
Yeah, and as Michael said, having U.S. distribution and U.S. fulfillment is an absolute requirement. And if you're not big enough to do it on your own, go through a third-party provider. But that is the cost of doing business, and there's no other option to be a player here.
Yeah. But for a small company, it will be maybe interesting starting in the US, but not looking at this market as one market and starting just with this approach to the whole market. Maybe smaller companies should target some regions of the United States. What's your view about this?
I don't know about regional so much, but I'll tell you kind of what is an emerging model. And again, Michael is part of this idea that you can create a brand online that is direct to consumer, but it's very simple. You don't come out with a whole line of products. You pick one type of product and it has a few iterations. You have a story behind this product, why it's important, why it exists. You build an audience, you build a consumer base, and then you turn to a Bed Bath & Beyond or a Macy's or another brand and you say, here's my audience. Here's who's buying, here's their demographics. You still continue to sell direct consumer, but you also are now distributing through one or two other retailers. Usually you start online, but sometimes you get programs into the stores. You can also, if you have a good import partner in the United States that has a good dropship setup, you might be able to work with them together to create something like this.
Yeah,
I would agree.
That's something.
Yeah, it's like diversifying your portfolio. You're not going to put all your stocks in or your money all in one stocks. Is divvying that up. So if e-commerce 4 months ago was 10% of your business, now it's 25-30%. But you still need to have that diversification in your portfolio, and that will allow you to grow because will e-commerce continue to grow exponentially? It will for right now, but at some point in time, it's going to start slowing, and that's where you need the brick and mortar business. So, it's just how you change your portfolio of your distribution model.
Yeah. Well, regarding retail and traditional retail, do you think that traditional retail could reinvent himself? Predictions. The future is not ours to see.
They're all talking that, and they've all been trying to find the right hook. The most popular strategy has been, again, this experiential retailing, but that involves a lot of close contact, a lot of touching, and a lot of in-your-face kind of involvement. So at least for the short term, we're not going to see that. So it comes back to the stores to be able to figure out another way to engage the shoppers. And some of them are doing it with curbside pickup and with delivery and with some of the other tactics that they're doing. So you're going to see stores adapt. I don't know how the rest of my colleagues feel, but good stores aren't going anywhere. The good stores are going to stay and are going to be important customers for your companies, but important places for shoppers to buy things here.
Yeah, I think that there's one theme that keeps running through all the conversations we're having today is that there were certain trends that were already existing and now they're accelerating. And certainly the idea of how many stores does any one company need to have? What do they need to offer consumers? How big do they need to be? How much merchandise and which merchandise really needs to be on the floor? How much of the store could be converted into same-day fulfillment? That just goes on to steroids now, and they were having trouble figuring it out before. As Warren said earlier, finance, the financials may drive some of these decisions for us. I think certainly we're going to see a lot fewer brick and mortar stores a year from now than we have right now.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Michael, you want to add something?
Yeah, it's about comfort and convenience. I mean, that's what's going to be going forward.
Okay.
Eduardo, let me just give you a couple of examples to people about this issue. I truly believe that the retail stores, they'll have to reinvent it themselves, the way they present the products. And let me tell you a couple of examples. First of all, Apple stores. Apple stores, they wouldn't care less. Actually, they sell very few iPhones, right? Who sells the iPhones are the telecom providers. So what the Apple store does, they provide a consumer experience. People go there to look at new products, to ask questions to the vendors, and they have a lot of vendors in their stores, but they don't really sell a lot of iPhones at an Apple store. So it's all about the consumer experience. Another story that I want to tell you is that I have a friend, and he owns a small retail store that he sells watches, like Rolexes, very expensive watches. And the other day he was complaining to me that customers that he knows for a long time, they come to the store and they ask him, do you have such and such a model of this Rolex? I would like to see it. And then he has to buy, he's an independent owner, he needs to buy that Rolex, brings it to the store, the customer goes, looks at the watch, says, yeah, it looks good, I'm going to think about it. And then the customer never shows up again because he can go online and buy the same Rolex for 2/3 of the price. And so I think that all of these businesses, because of the online trend, they'll have to adapt in some way so that they can offer the experience, but most of their sales with less inventory, smaller showrooms, they can sell their products online and the transaction online. I think this will happen in the future.
Mm-hmm. Well, we have a specific question about e-commerce. Usually, touch is very important when it comes to buying home textiles. Is this a problem when trying to sell online?
I mean, that's always going to be the problem, but
yeah,
Amazon and Jeff Bezos is how much is he worth now? So it's the convenience factor is if you know what you want, but the beauty of e-commerce, you can tell your story. You can tell your story about the luxury, the sustainability, the story of how the product is produced, who's making your products. I think you can convey that in copy, you can convey that in video and in reviews, and that will hopefully outweigh any potential returns of somebody buying it and saying, I don't like it, and sending it back.
Yeah, and here comes also VR and AR, maybe.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Warren.
Yeah. Yes, touch is important, but those taboos about what people would and would not buy online have mostly gone away. People said I would never buy a mattress online, and now online mattresses are 10 or 15% of the marketplace. People said I'd never buy shoes. I need to try them on, and now shoes are a big business. So, yeah, there's a customer that's always going to want to touch. And the return rates on textiles are probably going to be a little higher than on a toaster, but you can't not get into e-com because you're worried about that. It's there.
Yeah. Question to Jennifer: how do you think that textile companies can adapt the new trend of antiviral and antimicrobial? That's
antiviral, antimicrobial.
Microbial, yeah. This change will occur especially in the health sector or in general at homes. What do you think about that?
In general, it was already trending in home. It really, on the sleep side, it started out as heat regulation, but we started seeing the idea of healthier, cleaner environments, antimicrobial, anti-odor, merging with sustainability, that these things were being derived not from chemicals, but from, naturally derived resources from plants and whatnot. I mean, I'll tell you a quick story. Fique, the textiles chemicals company, after the SARS and MERS viruses, decided they needed to create an antiviral textile application. They brought it to market in 2014. They did not sell a single kilo. As of mid-March, every plant they have is now rushing into production with that treatment because they're getting so much demand from their textile accounts who see they can't promise that they can knock out COVID-19, but they have research showing that COVID viruses in general, they can neutralize and put down. So people are already working on these products, and the key places are Devon. They have a technology. Fique has a technology. Noble Biochemicals is banging the drum that they've got a technology. Each one has a slightly different story to tell. Some are all natural. There's a lot of silver. I've seen copper making the argument too. So the resources are out there from these companies.
Okay. Well, I guess we have another question that's more or less the $1 million question. What would be the better way to pass the message on a new product?
Well, at Textiles today, I'm going to say, call me and let us get the word out. But go to the trade shows. I think they're all trying to figure out what their form needs to be. Right now, Heim Textile thinks that they can go forward as normal in January. Some of the U.S. shows for the summer and the fall are still kind of up in the air. But trade shows are very important, and HTT is a resource. Our job is to hook people up, let suppliers know what retailers are doing, and let retailers know what suppliers are creating. And I would just throw in one more thing. The Home Fashion Products Association, the HFPA, with this pandemic has started doing once a month Zoom cast, and you don't have to be a member. Anybody can join in, and if you want to know what the suppliers in the U.S. and the importers see happening, it's a great place to kind of catch the pulse of the moment.
Yeah. Any comments, Warren?
No, Jennifer, go call Jennifer. She's your man here.
Okay. Okay. A question to João. We are almost finishing. João mentioned the need for the Portuguese manufacturers to mark their presence in the US market through market weeks as a means to promote their brands. In a market with the enormous dimension of the US, if it makes sense for Portuguese manufacturers to be worried about creating brands. That's a broader question for you, João.
Well, to create a brand, as I said before, it costs a lot of money, right? So depending on the availability of the cash flow of the company that we are talking about, that might not be the correct way of doing it. So we know that probably over 90% of the Portuguese textiles products export to the US are black label. That's for a good reason. Most of our companies are smaller companies. They don't have the financial means of creating their own brands. It's not of creating, it's of promoting their own brands in a market like the US that requires a lot of money. So they have been doing the sales through the other people's brands. And that's a way of doing it. Again, in the beginning, and someone referred in their presentation, what we should concentrate at this point, most likely, is to promote the Portuguese brand, made in Portugal. Because the home textiles in the US, the name Portugal already associates the home textiles to a product of good quality. And that's probably where we should concentrate right now. I don't know if Warren or Jennifer or Michael have.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. For individual companies to build a brand, it's probably prohibitive, but the Portuguese brand means something more realistic for the companies to band together and just have a common marketing campaign. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, starting as my own company and starting building a brand, I mean, it takes time and it takes money. So partner with your good vendors and help them become successful. Help them with your new products, and if you partner with them, then the business should come.
Yeah, we have 2 more minutes for questions. This one is for Jennifer, I guess. It's not identified, but I guess it's for Jennifer. None of these treatments, antiviral and microbial, are long-lasting. It is not a way to deceive the market.
Well, you have to be very careful in product claims. Now, West Point Home has a product that they have developed with a technology that they assert does not wash away. And that is why, and we didn't really spend much time on it here, but the certifications, the importance of transparency and certifications to back yourself up. You know, there are key retailers who have always been examining those very carefully. Of those who might have been a little fast and loose probably won't be anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any comments?
Yeah, I mean, Jeff, the certification process, GOTS, is one of the certifications that we hold near and dear, but that takes into it looks into the entire supply chain. So it's that transparency of the products that you have, and what you're buying is what you're getting, and you know what's inside.
We will turn the subject to the hospitality business that we did not mention in this webinar. How the shopping logistics circuit is organized right now in this context? Do you have any information about this? The hospitality business.
Yeah, and maybe Jennifer or Michael can talk about it, but it's an entirely different retail, entirely different distribution model. Those buyers don't come to the retail trade shows. There are wholesalers, some that are kind of in colleagues with hotel chains, some are independent, but a totally different buying model, a totally different sales force. And again, just based on how hurt the hospitality business has been in the U.S. and the pessimistic forecasts, I'm not sure that's an area to focus on for the next 9 to 12 months at least.
Yeah. Okay. Jennifer?
I have nothing to add there. No. He's absolutely right.
Okay. Michael?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's almost taking that 25% of your portfolio and bringing it down to 10. You still need to have it, but with the price compression of the inventory that's out there and the cotton prices being low, that's going to be a very tough category or channel to be in.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this is the last one. What is the level of consumer confidence in the U.S. right now? And how much has the furloughs affected the income of the U.S. consumers? What's your view on that? Warren?
I think you'll have to talk to an economist, but certainly the unemployment numbers are devastating, the highest we've seen in our business lifetimes, and they're going to come back, but a lot of those jobs are not going to come back. So you are going to see a reduction in income, particularly when some of the social programs, the unemployment insurance, the subsidies, and those kind of things kind of peter out and wear out, which they will. Consumer confidence, it's a tough one. You've seen some stores that have reopened, and some of those stores have been mobbed with people saying, I got to go out and buy stuff. So I think the consumer is looking for some positive news, and if they see anything, they're going to jump on it. I'm one of those people who thinks that Christmas and holiday this year is not going to be as bad as some other people think.
Mm-hmm. Jennifer?
Yeah, I kind of agree on Christmas. Some of the consumer surveys have been all over the place. Some have suggested that consumers, just because of the economic situation and people losing jobs, et cetera, that their plan is not to spend as much. But then you see other people, saying there's a pent-up demand. I think if things get bad and there's going to be a splurge, it's going to be in the fourth quarter.
Yeah. Michael?
Yeah, I would agree too, but I also think that the middle part, the good, better, best, I think it's going to be split, and you're going to have your good and you're going to have your best, and I think that's where the business is going to be, and the middle part's going to shrink. So is that the middle America? Probably, but we won't know until the fourth quarter.
Yeah. Okay. We have to end it. So thank you very much to you all. Thank you for answering a lot of questions and for your detailed presentations. And I will now change to Portuguese to the final words. Thank you. Muito obrigado a todos por terem assistido. Peço desculpa pelos problemas técnicos que tivemos ao longo deste tempo. Mais uma vez, estamos ao vosso dispor para questões. Os nossos oradores também estão ao vosso dispor para questões que possam colocar depois. Têm todos os contactos deles. E também, naturalmente, a nossa delegação em Nova Iorque. Muito obrigado a todos. Estejam atentos aos vossos gestores de cliente e também às mensagens que vos vamos enviando através do site e das redes sociais para os próximos webinars. Muito obrigado e boa tarde. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Obrigado.